On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 2017. We're going to be taking a look at JINJER, and they're going to be performing Pisces. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So, a bit of background behind this particular request. The person initially sent me this video, and it is labelled as a live session. So it's going to be the band in the studio, and as to whether it's live or not, this is an analysis video, so we will jump into that. But she was asking about the vocal techniques that are being used and whether I could explain them or give an idea as to what was going on, or if indeed it was some kind of effects pedal that the singer was using. So yeah, a few questions to answer with this, but of course I have isolated the vocal, run it through the pitch monitoring software as always, so you'll see that on screen, and let's jump into it and see how they get on.
Step forward and meet a new sunrise. A coward is shivering inside. Today I'll be a friend of mine who swallows suffering with smile. I drew a different reality with unconditional loyalty. Ego hardly can be picked 'cause I'm selfless.
I am going to jump in here. As always, there's a link in the description below if you want to watch this the whole way through without me interrupting. But a few things to point out straight off the bat. This vocal is pitch corrected, so I mean, even from the first note, you can tell, but this is why we have the pitch monitoring software up on screen. So as the vocal comes in, you can see that we're immediately stuck to the B3 there, and it's pitch corrected, not auto-tuned. So it means that the vocal has been placed over these lines of 440 Hertz rather than being snapped to it unnaturally. And that's why you very rarely, if ever, hear auto-tune nowadays, because pitch correction is the tool, especially in post-production, that has taken over. People using auto-tune live now because it can sound very mechanical and unnatural. They don't use it live, or at least if people do, they have to really hope that they get away with it. But it's a lot easier to do it in post-production with pitch correction because it's a manual process. Having said that, it means that this vocal that we're hearing is not the vocal that was produced, or at least the notes that are being hit aren't the notes that were being hit in the studio. And again, it brings up the whole debate of whether you can call something live if you're not actually hearing what was made at that time in the studio, that the voice or instrumentation or whatever it is has been edited before you then get to hear it. But this is labelled as a live session, so again, that's up to you whether you class something that's been post-produced and edited from a pitch standpoint, whether you still call that live. Yeah, the pitch correction that's been applied has not been too heavy, but it's something that as soon as I heard the verse, I can hear 440 Hertz, and voices don't stick to 440 Hertz naturally, so this is why it does stick out.
I'll be a friend of mine who swallows suffering with smile. I drew a different reality.
Okay, so now we've got another voice, and it's the lead singer's voice underneath her own voice. So again, I mean, this could be on a backing track, or it could be, I don't know. I don't think that this is chorus or anything like that, because it sounds like the phrasing is ever so slightly different. And this is the typical double track sound that you get from any vocal that's been double tracked. You get this thicker sound to it because of the doubling up of the vocal, but it's not the same vocal copied and pasted, because that wouldn't work. It's got to be a different take of the vocal, and it might be that they do play to backing tracks live, and it's just something that they have on there and play to a click. But again, I'm just telling you everything that's going on here. This brings up a point. It's just reminded me of a question that somebody asked me through email saying, oh, I've seen this performance or that performance, and there's another channel who have reacted to it, and there might have been, an opera singer or a professional singer or vocal coach who have reacted to a particular performance. And I think this actually might have been the one that they were talking about, because I said, oh, just so you know, it has been pitch corrected. And they said, oh, but I've seen lots of people do reactions or, I don't know, breakdowns, analysis videos on this performance, and nobody's mentioned pitch correction. And they say, well, why would nobody else mention it? And sadly, I mean, I do have a history in doing everything myself, which means production as well. And I've been tuning my guitar to 440 hertz since the age of 11. So it's like 30 years ago. So I can hear 440 hertz. As soon as you have a human voice that is hitting notes like a keyboard does, it just doesn't sound natural. So I don't need to see these lines to know when something's been pitch corrected. But anyway, everybody can't hear it. And even some professionals who sing for a living and actually teach people to sing can't hear it either. So they think they're hearing somebody's voice, and they might say, oh, they're so accurate pitch-wise, not knowing that the vocal has been stuck to 440 hertz. So that's why it's sounding ridiculously accurate, is because it's more accurate than a human voice can actually achieve. I think, unfortunately, this is the length that, or at least this is the depth of the rabbit hole that even professionals whose job it is to listen to voices and teach people how to sing can't hear that pitch correction's being used. And I don't know how you can't hear it, because to my ear it is so blatantly obvious. And sometimes it's done so badly, and you think, well, where's now the art form of production? Because surely a producer wants to make it subtle so that people can still appreciate the vocal without just hearing 440 hertz straight away. Now, sometimes when we do get this little bit of expression, this is what pitch correction can do. And especially if somebody's got a wide vibrato, it allows the vibrato to happen, and it allows bits of expression to happen because it's a manual process. So everything that we're seeing on the lines, and when it's stuck to the lines, that's been done manually. If you didn't have this on the screen, you'd have to listen to it and try and judge it that way, which I think is a much better way to start. If you have to apply pitch correction, to do it with your ears, and don't look at 440 hertz. Just try and hear where the best frequency is, because I guarantee you that if producers started to do that, we wouldn't be hitting lines all the time. It sounds like we've got double track guitars left and right. Again, so as for, I can only see one guitar here. So, I mean, with the picking going on. So as to how you would get that panned left and right without, you can't just copy and paste it, because you doing this, panning it left and right, you have to have two separate guitar takes in order for it to sound like this.
Virgin innocence, one being brings life, with all the rest for death. Still among the lies, virgin innocence, one being brings life, with all the rest for death.
So, I think this is what the person was asking about with the voice and what's going on with it. It's not an effects pedal, by the way. This is vocal technique that is achieving this. And you might think, well, it's a female vocalist, so how is she hitting notes? And this is the other thing. If you do look at the pitch monitoring software, look at the voice here. It goes from, when we're in the verse, let me take it back to the verse so you can see that it is pitching notes. It is hearing pitch and frequencies. When we get to the heavy part, we're just kind of getting the software saying, oh, I can't hear a note anywhere. And this is very much what the technique is. It's not hitting notes, but now that I know that this is referred to as screaming in the vocal community, it's something that I've never done myself. And I have mentioned before about being into, you know, classic rock, hard rock, possibly a bit of metal and kind of 80s metal, which tended to be a lot lighter back then. But when you start getting into really heavy genres and this kind of thing where it's now a scream, but a vocal that isn't being harmonized with, isn't hitting notes, I've never really got into this kind of singing or this kind of music. But it doesn't mean that I can't appreciate the technical ability on show and the playing in the band. It is progressive and we've got great playing across the board here. So in terms of getting into the technique, like I said, I've never tried to do this, but I think it's one of those things where some people can do things with their voices and they might not necessarily know how they can do it, they just do it. And I think that's probably the case here. Not saying that you can't learn to do this, but if I for some reason wanted to try and do this, I know that I can do things with my voice that I've never explored because I haven't got into this kind of heavy style of singing or sounding like a demon, which is pretty much what it is. The impressive thing about Tatiana's vocal is that she's got rid of all of that resonance that you might associate with a female voice. So if you weren't to look at this, you might think that it was a male vocalist or just a demon, which is, I guess, the point of it. And I don't know whether it is this or not. But I know that when I engage my vocal cords like this and singing notes as I go down, I'm still connecting my vocal cords. And when I get to the bottom of my range, it then stops. But then I can go... and I can make that sound. And if I want to, I can talk here. I can make sound. But I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to explain what's going on there. I'm kind of applying more air. And I guess if I was into this kind of music, I would explore what's happening here. I would try and... yeah, I don't know how loud this is even coming across because it sounds quite quiet, but I'll get closer to the microphone. So if I'm speaking like this, it's a definite different sound. So now I'm just taking out everything as I lean over it. But yeah, that sound is, I'm not hitting a note. It's all happening in the same kind of place. And I don't know whether that's what people are doing and whether that's getting my false chords. I mean, it must be using my false chords in some respect because it's not this. It's totally different to this, the voice that I just did. It's like when people hit really high notes and they don't know how they're doing it. They just say, well, do what I do or do what I'm doing. And then somebody says, well, I don't know how to do what you're doing. How do you do it? And they say, well, I don't know. The good thing is that for me, doing those sounds, it doesn't hurt my voice. It doesn't feel unnatural. It's just something that I can do. So maybe, if I got really close to a mic and I started to try and work on it, then I would be able to find my own voice or scream, as is referred to as. With this particular performance, it does sound like she's done this twice. So you can hear an ever so slight hint of another resonating sound that is the same scream that's happening behind the one that she's doing. So it sounds like there might be some subtle mixing of a couple of the voices going on here. We'll listen to it again. And you can actually see how close she is to the microphone. So it makes me think that it's not a loud sound at all, that it's probably quite quiet. It's not like belting and chest voice. So, you have to go away from the mic because it's so loud. So, I mean, that speaks more to what I was doing that was quieter, and I came closer to the mic so that you could hear it because it sounded like it was too quiet. For the people that are into this, I'm sure that this is great. especially because they wouldn't be expecting to see a female vocalist, I guarantee that. But just the way that the voice is so authentic in that demonic place, and the light and the shade that obviously you're allowed to get from the singing in the verse and in the chorus, the screaming.
No promises I ever give. Don't rely on me and I won't deceive. The beginning or the end, you can't tell.
And here, I mean, even though we've got the pitch correction going on, you can hear that she's got this. It's quite a covered sound, you know, it's like, yeah, it's not like that. It's not really open. So it gives it that softer, more blended sound vocally, which means that by the time you get to the heavier vocal, you're going to get one hell of a contrast. This is the kind of thing that when there's obvious expression in the voice and this bluesy slide that we have that's flat of the E4, if you were to pitch correct that, you would totally lose the whole point of where this note is placed. You know, she's intentionally not getting to this E4. So then people would say, well, if she's intentionally not hitting that note, why is she getting pitch corrected on all the other notes that she might not intentionally be hitting, but just using being flat or sharp for the emotional impact that it has? But yeah, that's the age-old question. Why pitch correct everything on every great vocalist's performance? Right, so going back, and what I'll do is get rid of this just to point out what I noticed there. You can see how close she is to the microphone, and therefore you hear every breath. But then if you watch where she goes and listen for the breath, we hear her breath of her being right in front of the microphone when her head is nowhere near the microphone. And you would never hear this unless you were really close up. So obviously, the only explanation for this is that they've taken a vocal from another take and we're looking at a video of them doing another take, but they haven't used the vocal from the take we're looking at. Another thing, just on a technical point, we do have keys in here, at least it sounds like it, not that we get to see them in the performance. We do have lots of different elements going on here that we're not necessarily seeing, and like I said, it might be that live they do have things on backing tracks, so yeah, that might just be part of it. So calling it live, and her vocal might be on the backing track, but then live her voice will not be pitch corrected, I guarantee that. So that's something that has been added in afterwards, but still been referred to as live. I mean, this is really cool because we've got lots of atmosphere here. I'm still trying to see this keys because they're now triggering the sound of wind, which, yeah, of course, that's got to be a triggered sound. I don't know where they're triggering that from. Maybe the drummer could trigger that, but I can't see anything here, even when removing this. I'm trying to see any pads that you might trigger that particular sound effect with, but we'll continue on. And here we've actually got Tatiana's voice whispering in the mix as well. Again, this is going to have to be something that's either overdubbed or a totally separate take. And I've just noticed something over here. So we've got a laptop. Now, whenever you see a laptop, that means that there's usually some kind of triggering going on, or indeed a full backing track going on. So out of the laptop will have the backing track, all of the elements, maybe the previous vocal that was underneath, and this whispering that comes in will be on the laptop, and the drummer, I haven't actually seen, because we're looking at the pitch monitoring software, it's difficult to see whether he's got in-ears in or he has, yeah. So he's got a click track in his ear, that's what he's playing to, so the elements for the pre-recorded stuff is on the backing track. So again, this is something that I'm glad that I spotted that just on this particular shot, because it explains what I'm trying to explain, or think of how are they doing this live, thinking that it is literally all a live performance. Because when you then hear two voices, you think, well, that can't be live if the singer's singing twice, but it's on the backing track. On the backing track, we've got synth, other screams that are happening at the same time in the chorus with the vocal that are kind of lower in the mix, but they are in there. And maybe another guitar on the backing track, because I said we've got left and right, and that would explain the other guitar. So there might be another guitar on the backing track, and these little, you know, whispering elements on the backing track as well as the atmosphere, like the wind. So that's on the backing track. So we've got kind of 5 things there that are happening behind the scenes, but at least we're still hearing a vocal, but it has been pitch corrected afterwards. And then, like I said, guitar, bass, and drums.
Make me flashing when the winter cries.
But something that I will say about especially this genre, but this band, is that the atmosphere is so important. So if you're going to watch them live and you think, well, do you want all of that atmosphere which you get from these backing track elements, or do you just want guitar, bass, vocals, and a drummer? Because that is going to sound, you know, hardly atmospheric at all. I totally understand the need for its use here to give you this atmosphere live, because I'm sure that fans of the band hear this and they will expect this live.
Searching for the room to catch on and see the sunbeam.
Interesting that now when she's belting at the top end of, you know, her chest voice, it sounds like a bit of a mixed voice as well, but she's not handing this off. She's not getting light with it. The top note that we're hearing couldn't be more different to the low screams that we've heard earlier on. So talk about a contrast in a voice. And there we have it. And by the way, at the end there, where the sound changes a little bit, you can see the way that Tatiana is changing the shape of her mouth in order to not change pitch. You know, she's not going up and down, but allowing more resonance to happen in the what would be the higher frequencies, even though they're not very high, but the higher frequencies of the scream to allow those to come out a little bit more. So you get almost the illusion of changing pitch by it becoming a brighter sound. There's something at the end here that happened. Yeah, so here, there was a drop in, which means that the vocal was a different take, because the vocal that's now taking over is happening at the same time as the previous vocal that hasn't finished yet. But an interesting one to take a look at tonight for loads of different reasons. Thank you guys for requesting this particular video for me to take a look at. And as always, keep their suggestions and requests coming in the comment section below. Let me know what you guys think. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys at the next one. Rock!